I think that's why I had so much luck, if you will, at the beginning of my cycling career, because not too many people would have started that late at that age after, having been addicted to drugs and an eating disorder and all this. But it was like, I just kind of came out of that with this, like, what is truly possible for me? And I don't know, this cycling thing may be crazy, but I'm having a darn good time giving it a try. And I was able to stay in that darn good time, give it a try, stay in that feeling of, could you make it to the next level? Could you possibly get a call from the national team?
Hey, Dotsie, thanks so much for being here with me.
Oh, this is exciting. You're almost launching your podcast. So congrats and gosh, good luck. You're going to have a great journey.
Yeah, I was in LA not too long ago when Jason introduced us via text. And I just know Jason Robel is talks as highly of as he does with you, as I knew we would have a connection. I just knew it.
Oh, so, love him.
Really,
he's my brother from another mother. For sure of that.
Well, I think about my own life in terms of chapters, Dotsie.
Okay. Yeah.
And it does seem to me that your life also has some pretty well-defined chapters. Would you agree with that? In a sense.
Yes. And I'm in the midst of writing a memoir. And so I have literally cut my life up into chapters, girl.
Well, look at that. That is
21. And I was like, that's too many. We need
to
cut this
down. That's a lot of chapters. Maybe we won't go 21 today, but I would love to go through some of those chapters today, relate them to holistic health, which for me means, yes, the physical, the mental, the emotional health, but also metaphysical, like health on the energetic and spiritual levels, consciousness, and our connection to purpose. So I think in order for people to fully understand how extraordinary an accomplishment it was for you to end up on the podium in the 2012 Olympic Games, it does make sense to start with that chapter in your early 20s when you did become sick with the eating disorder. But before we do, I'd love to put you on the hot seat with a little lightning round to help us get to know the 2022 version of Dotsie Bausch, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Here's the questions. Try to just kind of answer with what comes to you. What is your current driving force or your life's purpose at this moment?
Speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves.
What's a food or meal that you could eat every day for the rest of your life?
Avocado.
What comes more easily to you these days? Self-discipline or self-compassion?
Self-compassion.
What are 3 specific daily habits or rituals that you have now that help you on a daily basis vibe higher?
Hike with my dog, kiss my husband, and eat avocado. I'm serious.
I love it. Yes. Okay. You've been gifted a billboard. What do you choose to put on that billboard?
Oh, girl, we are in the midst of creating billboards right now.
I thought that might be the case.
For Switch Recruitment. And it is a glass of milk with white power with a question mark. And I won't tell you what the bottom of the billboard says because we're still sussing that out. But the other option besides that is Charles Manson and Hitler and Jeffrey Dahmer with a milk mustache. So we're just going to get in a lot of trouble, I think, is what that means. But we've been having those are just ideas.
Oh, this is fun.
Audience that gets that whole deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fun. Okay. Milk, I want to be on that. I want to be in those meetings, those planning meetings. That's got to be a lot of fun.
We just all sit there like this the whole time. Like, oh God, we can't do that. Yes, we can. No, we can't. Yes, we can.
Totally get that. Okay. Last one. 3 people, dead or alive, who deeply inspire you.
My my husband every minute of every day. I'm going to throw Jason Robel in there because the last couple of years he doesn't really know this, I don't think, but he's one of the people that I think of when I feel like I can't anymore. And my little guy, my little Chihuahua that we were just talking about, he is such a fighter. He's 16 and a half. So he's basically like 92 and his whole body is failing him. But man, he just still lives each day. And it's just so inspiring to see. And it makes me smile and cry at the same time watching him age. But I've been thinking just so much about him as I go through strifes. It's like, just do this like Yodi. Take it in stride like Yodi. Be like Yodi. So yeah. He's just, I don't know that I'll be able to behave that way if my body starts failing me.
That's a good question. And I can totally resonate with my little girl, Shy. She's 16-ish and she's been through so much spinal surgery. I'm trying to look into little wheelchairs for her at this point.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I tell people that and they give me the sad face and what I see is with her little spirit, she's going to get those wheels on and she's going to be nothing, but I just have this feeling she's just going to go and it's going to be this whole new world for her that she hasn't been able to experience in a long time. I think it's going to make her so happy. You know, and we think about people. I want
to see a video of that first.
And that's different, but yeah. How are you like your Chihuahua? In what ways?
We're both crazy stubborn, very loud, and like to do things our own way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very Chihuahua. Very Chihuahua thing.
That's why I love that breed so much.
Me too. Me too. You have to earn their trust. That's for sure. They earn their respect.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting that you talked about self-compassion being what comes more naturally to you now. If we go back to that chapter I was talking about before, can you share a little bit with our audience about that chapter with the eating disorder and that, I mean, really lack of self-compassion at that point, I assume.
Yeah, complete lack of self-compassion, I think, and so much like an overabundance of self-discipline, really, to the point where I could starve myself and somewhat compete in life. That didn't last for the entire time when I got really sick and was hospitalized. But taking that journey from extreme self-discipline, which now I don't know. It's like sometimes I go, I don't know. That part of me is just kind of, it's fading away in a beautiful way that I just am so much more capable and able to wake up in the morning and just sort of start my day with passion and gusto. And if it lasts, it lasts. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I would have never been okay with that before, right? Like it had to be like on point the whole day, everything, every piece, every system that I was running. And now I just will allow myself to not feel it for the day. If I had something specific I wanted to do, if I, it's just not leaning into it. I feel like I'm leaning into a little bit more comfort these days and not leaning into as much certainty. Like I had to know before, like I really needed the crystal ball. And now I just, I'm okay with not knowing. I don't really know what the next adventures are necessarily going to be. If I am going to run switch for 10 more years or 2 more years, and it's just fun to sort of stay in it and it's not easy, but it's easier than it was to just stay in it, just stay right here, just stay right in here and give fear a chance, if you will. Right? Like let the fears that come in, because of course they do for all of us, like kind of let that fear ride, give a little bit of a chance, to kind of unfold and see what happens. And I didn't like that fear before, right? I was always trying to control it.
Do you remember when that shift started to happen for you? When you started to,
for sure. I mean, healing from anorexia was an intensive about 2.5 year journey. And as I was journeying the recovery through a therapist that I finally found, I had been in and out of treatment centers and in and out of group and in and out of blah, 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 right? With other therapists, like I think 4 other ones. Anyway, what it came to was I was finally really willing to try, right? I was never really willing all those other times. I just kind of was pretending. So when I was really willing to try, she just matched me perfectly with the system that if you will, that she had. And I go into depth in my book, but there was a blue dot system, and we probably don't have time to go deep into all of it, but and a snake towel system. And so there were these ways that she allowed me to access feelings in my body, find them, find their color, find their temperature, find their shape, be with them, sit with them. Like I had spent a lifetime, really since I was about 6, where I had a traumatic event take place where I stopped feeling like, and you don't know it when you're 6. I mean, you have no idea that that's what you've done. But as I look back, I realized like that was the period of time that I started shutting down access to my feelings. And so I was a really good anorexic because I had shut down all access to feelings. So I just like did what I had to do and did the calories, did the day, did the system to, try and disappear. That was the goal, like initially. So as I worked through all of it with my therapist over those years, I came out of that into a space where I was no longer hiding or squelching me and my feelings and my innermost desires and my innermost loves and my innermost things that I wanted to try. And I think that's why I had so much luck, if you will, at the beginning of my cycling career, because not too many people would have started that late at that age after, having been addicted to drugs and an eating disorder and all this. But it was like, I just kind of came out of that with this, like, what is truly possible for me? And I don't know, this cycling thing may be crazy, but I'm having a darn good time giving it a try. And I was able to stay in that darn good time, giving it a try, stay in that feeling of, could you make it to the next level? Could you possibly get a call from the national team? So it just, it was a lot of hard work, but I remember it all very, very well. And it was over that span, that short span of about 2.5 years that I was able to wake up, if you will.
Yeah. I'm wondering if if it's worth maybe taking the time to share 1 or 2 of the strategies, only because, disordered eating is something that I struggled with and shared with my audience, and a lot of my Sexy Fit Vegan audience who's coming over still struggles with this. And I do think, tell me if you agree that some of these strategies this is not about the food, right? I mean, ultimately this is it's never about the food. So these strategies that maybe worked when it came to food can also work in so many other areas of our lives. So would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's not about the food. It's just, I think, just the really typical thought in our society that the eating disorders are about the food, but people know that alcohol addiction or drug addiction or sex addiction, it's not really about the poison, whether it be alcohol or drugs. But they know it's about inner pain, inner trauma, like people, same thing, right? Like it's just the poison that you've chosen to act out on inner pain. So I think it's so important to mention that. And even at the highest level, we just Switch for Good just created a plant-based playbook for high-level athletes and delivered it to the IOC. And one of the first things that the medical director of the IOC said, one of the first things out of his mouth was a concern about eating disorders. And I'm never shocked, but I am.
Yeah.
I was like, what? It's written by 5 doctors and a couple dietitians. is 300 some odd references. Like it's the most evidence-based resource that you could possibly get to understand. If you're interested in eating plants as an athlete, this is for you. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like what the, yeah. So anyway, to your point, it just was so, you just, it hit you from the wildest places I never would expect, like, what are you? And so I had to like school him on what an eating disorder is, that it's not about food, it's about, and if somebody wants to go plant-based or vegan, especially if it's ethical, you better have a resource for them, because you don't want them to do it wrong. You don't want them to just eat rice or just, so anyway, but I think the most helpful strategy was the blue dot system. And I just shared a teeny bit of what you do in the blue dot system. But what it is literally blue sticky dots from the drugstore, that you would put on notebooks to organize in school or something. So my therapist had me put a blue dot. This was like day 3 of working with her. And so she said, I want you to go buy these blue dots. I want you to put the blue dots on any place in your home that's triggering for you. As you can imagine, that might be the refrigerator, the toilet. And every time you see a blue dot, you're going to stop. You're going to do this very specific meditation, which was what I was just sharing. It's close your eyes. You access the source of pain in your body. It could be in your big toe, it could be in your knee, it could be in your shoulder. For me, it was always upper chest, like right under my throat. And identify the temperature, identify the shape, identify the size, identify the intensity. And then you open your eyes and you can go ahead and do whatever you were going to do, whether that was binge, purge. It was the first person that ever gave me any freedom to make my own decisions around my eating disorder, right? The other therapists had been like, here's the rules. Like you're going to walk out of their office and like, never stop eat, never starve or never stop eating or never throw up again. Like, oh, thanks for that, therapist. I'm right. So she's like, you just have to do this one thing beforehand. And I walked out and I thought, okay, I can do this, because I still get to act out on my pain. I still get to throw up, because at that point it had definitely catapulted into a raging bulimia, throwing up 16, 17 times a day. And so to give me that permission to just still do my thing. But as you can imagine, over a period of time, and I remember the very first time that I decided not to, she had given me all these things that I could do instead of. So when you open your eyes and you aren't going to act out on the eating disorder, here's like 10 things that we can, it's like, go for a walk, go for a hike, go get your nails done. And when I made that first decision, it took months.
Wow.
But that was probably the most free I've ever felt my whole life, of being able to like, I don't need to, I woke up. I mean, you kind of feel like you're waking up because you're meditating. And I thought, I don't need to do the thing. I don't need to do the pain. I went for a walk, and I was living in West Hollywood, and I walked all the way to Santa Monica, which is almost 10 miles. And I couldn't stop walking. And then I reached the beach and I had to stop walking because I got to swim. I mean, it was like so that's one of the tactics. Yeah.
Wow. That's such an empowering thing, because it gave you still that control that, gave you the power. You're
right. Yeah. Just to be in charge of your own ship, right? How is this going to unfold? Yeah. I liked that. I like that, the way that you're saying it, and it did. And it's almost like it put the pressure on me, which that part of my personality liked, right? Like, it's a challenge. Can you do this? Yeah. At the end of the day. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I like that. Okay. So self-discipline. I want to keep going back to this, because this fascinates me right now. So you had self-discipline to not eat, and then to control your food in a sense. And then you, as a professional athlete, you need obviously large amounts of self-discipline. Did you have that kind of discipline when you were growing up? Where do you think that came from?
Yeah, I think there's a little DNA involved, right? Like, I think, yes, I was like that from a young age. I had a deep desire as a young age to just do things my own way. I always told my mom from tiny, I do it, even when I couldn't even form like a real sentence. She said I just kind of came out of the womb saying I do it. So I had that desire just to like chart my own course and just do it my way and not do it the way like everyone else does it. But I think as it started to unfold into my cycling career, after having lived through anorexia and bulimia, I really kind of leaned more into the curiosity of could I do this? Could I be this? And that and joy ended up fueling my entirely cycling career. Like I loved riding my bike. And I fell deeply in love with it. It's not like I started out the first day racing, right? I just was riding and I hadn't experienced freedom in a long time, as you know, struggling from an eating disorder too. And so that was like my first taste of what it felt like to just truly have like the wind in my face, right? And just like I was riding my bike up Pacific Coast Highway and into the Malibu Mountains, and I could have ridden for 200 miles. I think that day I rode for almost 100. And I didn't have the stamina for that yet, but it was just, can I? And I just kept asking that question for almost my whole career. And that it was more that, not so much the discipline. Of course, right, I had discipline to train for sure. But it was just the curiosity. And that's how I feel even now. Like I'm curious to see if we can really make a big difference with what we're doing at Switch. I don't know. And that is just so much more of a positive and quite frankly, fun way to do things. Anything that you want to set your heart and mind to, right? Is just, can I? Some days, no, but most days, yes.
Well, I'd love to jump right into your going vegan story. I think this is fascinating. And we've got plenty of documentaries out there, amazing documentaries to watch about your journey to get on the podium and all of this. But I'd love to, for our audience, a lot of whom are new to this idea of plant-based. We've got some people that have been plant-based a long time or vegan, and some people that are just interested and moving in that direction. And I love your story. Can you talk about when that moment came that you thought that, maybe I need to give this a try, even though like it was very interesting timing in terms of being an athlete and all of a sudden, you're making this big switch.
Yeah. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Kentucky. And so I grew up eating every animal part and piece and every animal product that you could think of. And it was, on every plate. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It really was. It was brisket and it was barbecue and it was chicken fingers and chicken legs and chicken ribs. I was like eating every part of every animal and all the fixins, right? There was collard greens, but they had been boiled in a ham hock. It was a lot of animal food. But I had this really deep rooted connection to animals from when I was teeny tiny. So I was like, everyone really, where you just can't quite put the dots together, right? Like I just had not connected. It was like I was living the system of these are the animals we love, these are the animals that we eat, these are the animals that we wear, these are the animals we test on, these are
right. This is just how it is, and this is just like the way it works.
And so sadly, I had never put a single thought into any of that. I'm just doing the thing, right? And it was just the exact opposite of what I said earlier, because I was doing what everyone else was doing. I wasn't doing, I do it, right? I was doing, this is just like with society, this is what works. So because of my deep connection to animals, at some point, I was exposed to what goes on behind closed doors in our food system via online. And I'm a couple years out from the Olympic Games, but I haven't made the Olympic team yet, right? Like not just, there's a lot of options besides me at this point in the drive towards the Olympics. So, and I just experienced this like confusion, right? Which we're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Like, this cannot be what goes on. This is not how my food is made. And I was a little bit snotty about it because, quite frankly, the video was from another country because they were speaking another language in the video and yelling at the animals. And I thought, well, that must be how they do it in other countries. They don't do that here. I mean, you know, the US would not. Oh yeah, no, we're the worst. So the truth, I start unraveling the truth. And this is over just a period of like some days. Cause I'm like, what the F, right? I go deep, hard, fast. Okay. Come out with the information. I go, well, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to like keep paying into this system, living in this system with your values, that what you say that your values are, or are you going to make a change? I'm going to make a change. Okay. This is interesting. What am I going to eat? Right. The question that, how is this going to go? And I just was very committed and very focused, very, very fast, like unbelievably fast. Cause I kept saying, I had this thing in the back of my head that said, who am I? How will I look in the mirror if I go back to eating animals because I want to make an Olympic team? Like, how freaking shallow. So I had this thing in the back of my head that said, if you do this, you will not be steered wrong. Like, something good's going to come from it. And I don't know what that was. It just stuck back there. I thought, this is going to go okay.
Did you know anybody else that was eating?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point too, I don't even know Brendan Brazier or Robert Cheek or Rich. I don't, you know, and yeah, they're all men, right? So, I mean, I didn't, it took me even I learned about them like after the Olympics. I mean, this was, you know, cause this is like 10 years, you know, this is 12 years ago. So, I didn't even have any like females that I go, okay. Cause you know, we're usually a bit smaller, so we need a different calorie, amounts and concoctions. So I just started figuring it out. Like, the one thing is I had a pretty solid education in nutrition. You know what I mean? I knew you could get protein from many sources. I knew that I already loved vegetables and grains and legumes. I always ate a lot of them. So it wasn't like the, you know, McDonald's diet to the, you know, whole food plant-based diet. It was like sort of there. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to remove this stuff, eat more of this. And I just started figuring it out. And my teammates were amazing. We had a lot of trust in each other. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, this is just what she's doing. You know, we trust her in general. And then the coaches were like, yeah, that's weird. And you're going to like, but I don't know that they really cared at that point, because there's other people they're choosing to go to the Olympics. Like, if I fuck it up with this diet thing, you know, whatever I did, you know, that's up to me. So we weren't at that point where it was like, I was already on the team and they were like, whoa, this could, you know, you might die if you, but some of them I think thought I might
shrivel up and
they just really that super old school thinking. So I actually didn't get met with like that much opposition. And I didn't announce it either. Like, I just start, you know, it's not like, hear ye. I just, like, all right. So we would be at the training center, and that's when we would eat together. But for the most part, you know, we lived in our own homes and ate, you know, and so it wasn't on display all the time. It was a little challenging when we would go to races, right? World Cups, world champs in different countries. And like, you know, there was some times when I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to need like 4 peanut butter sandwiches when I get back. But I knew that, you know, I knew that calories, I knew whatever. So then like, I just started freaking flying on the bike. It was like, what is happening? And that was exciting because I didn't know that was going to be the gift. I just knew that it wasn't going to steer me wrong. I knew it wasn't going to make me not make the Olympic team if I was supposed to make the Olympic team. But I didn't know that I was going to start feeling the way that I was feeling, and the output that was coming out of me, and my resiliency and my repair and my recovery. I mean, everything just was like, like,
how long after you started eating exclusively plants did you notice?
Well, so the first thing I noticed was, and you know this as an athlete, and especially I was like, you know, 38. So I was like a little bit of an older athlete. So recovery and repair is like your race, right? That's to be able to get to where you can train more and train harder, because whoever can do that are mostly making the most gains, but you got to come to it in somewhat of a repaired situation, or you're just going to, hammer yourself. So it's like, okay, I started realizing when I was waking up in the morning, we usually wake up as high level athletes, especially training a lot, with a training hangover, which I always say feels just like an alcohol hangover, right? You're just like, you're foggy, you're tired, you're sore, you're inflamed, you're sluggish. I would always say, can't train till 10. That was like the funny thing that we would say, because you're just screwed until 10, it was like, I needed 6 cups of coffee and, so that was the very first thing I noticed. And within like 3, 4, or 5 weeks, I was waking up and I was like, that's weird. Well, I must have not trained that hard yesterday. I mean, for a while, I was like, well, maybe the blah, blah, blah. Or I took an extra ice bath last night. So, but then finally I was like, well, hold on a minute. This is consistent. And so that was the first thing I noticed was I could train at 8. I mean, I just could go out the door. I just was ready to rock so much faster. So that felt great, because it sucks to wake up and feel like that every single day. So it was kind of like a bright light, right? Like it was almost like the light bulb turned on, and then I could see clearer, which sounds strange, but I really could. It was like everything was brighter and clearer. And I just wasn't like, I can only attribute it to all the inflammatory foods that I was eating that just kind of made me kind of, I was always like on the couch, like in a ball when I wasn't training, you're just, oh God, what is this over? And then I didn't feel like that anymore.
And did your coaches, your teammates, did they notice? Were you sharing?
They did notice, but they didn't attribute it to the diet. Like,
that's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Now they might, right? We have so much more information now. There wasn't a whole bunch of evidence back then. There's a lot now, but not enough. Right. So I mean, so here's the deal. And this is what the naysayers always try to say to me. Well, you don't know if you would have been that good or better on meat. Of course not. We'll never know. Not going to redo it. Thank you for that. What we do know is I did it on plants. Yeah. So that is, So I think we were all getting better because we were, headed towards a big event.
Working your asses off.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was getting better. So what that is attributed to is not up for debate, in my opinion, because I lived it, but it tends to be up for debate in the outside world.
So at what point did you start to realize that you wanted to be a voice and start talking about this and sharing this? Like almost the day after I stepped off the Olympic podium. I just hadn't put much thought to it prior to that, because I didn't have the capacity to do anything else but do what I was doing to try to make that team and do that. But yeah, when I got home from London, it was like the first thing I didn't even realize, so there was there probably was Instagram in 2012, but I didn't have it. They're just the social media. I mean, there was Facebook, but I didn't communicate on it. It was, so I kind of came home and was like, can I do anything? And then I start kind of uncovering some animal rights organizations, and I hadn't even found them before. And then my husband comes home from picking us up Native Food, which is a vegan restaurant near us. And he comes home, and no, it's so good. We still go all the time. And he said, I was picking up the food, and out on the patio was this like group of people talking about this stuff that you talk about. And he's not vegan yet at this point. Like he went pretty soon after, because I kind of showed him, and he was like, oh, that's terrible. Let's change. And so he brings me a flyer from their table. Like he went up to them, can I have a flyer? So he brings a house of Mercy for Animals, little group. So I called them, and they're just an hour north in LA. And Ari Solomon, who's not there anymore, but is just an incredible human. He's like, oh, hell yeah, come on up. We'll give you a tour. So I drove up to LA. I went on a tour of which was a very tiny office. And we went to lunch, and he said goodbye. And I went to the front desk, and I bought like 10 t-shirts. And I drove home, and I remember being like, oh, it's game on. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's game on. It was so just there. So for a long time, I just
would volunteer with Humane League of Mercenary Animals, like a leafletting and activism, just like anybody that would take me to do anything. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it just, I was on fire for it really quickly.
Now, okay. So when I did the same kind of thing, but I was like 9 years old, and that was 1990, like 1990-ish. Okay. Found all this information, called PETA and Vegan Outreach. They started sending me boxes. So I'm in my middle school, passing out flyers. I'm sitting in cages on the side of the road, like, look, you guys. And in my mind, and I went vegan when I was 15 and led animal rights groups in my little, town. And in my mind, it was, if people just don't know.
Me too.
Right.
Totally. Because I didn't know. So then you're like, oh, no one knows. Right.
And so I'm asking because I was like, I look back and I'm like, oh, in my child's mind. But I think this goes across the gamut. Once you find out and you connect, then it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Now I know. Now I changed. Now I get to share. And when everybody else finds out, they're going to be just like me and do the same thing. That doesn't happen. What kind of went through your mind when you went through that process, and how did that morph into what you're doing now?
Well, I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time that you met someone that you shared the truth and they didn't care?
Oh yeah.
That was a mind bender for me.
Yeah.
Because that's where you are in the beginning. You just, oh my gosh, just share the thing. Oh my God, we're going to be vegan like in December. Like it's going to be fine. It's going to
exactly.
And then they're like,
spread like wildfire.
So naive.
Yeah.
Not every brain and heart is the same. Yeah. Well, what was the question?
Yeah. So I'm curious what was going through your mind and what you thought was going to happen with your efforts, and then how that shaped what you do and how you do it now.
I thought it was going to be much, much easier. Yeah. And nowadays it's not. And I kind of like lean into my therapy and the work that I did to heal from my eating disorder, which wasn't easy. And so now I just go, if it's worth it and it matters and it's going to sustain, it ain't going to be easy. Yeah. And so that just drives me every day. Like, why are you expecting this? Like, this is not going to be easy, right? This is since the beginning of time thinking we're trying to change. And the truth is we're only, 50 years at it. But Singer's book came out in 1975, 2 years after I was born. PETA started in 1980. Like, we're like 50 years, 49 years, 48 years. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's not that much time. So it also drives me because I think, how long it took for women to be able to vote from the first time someone said like, hey, that's fucked up. It was over 100 years. As we know, slavery was 400 years from the first time somebody said. I hope it doesn't take that long. It probably will. It may never be entirely, but we're kind of just at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I relate this back to holistic health because I keep needing to do that when I talk to an ethical vegan, but because this is about, something so much bigger than ourselves and connecting to a purpose in and really about elevating consciousness when if I start to explore like, okay, what drives people? Yes, we always go back to health and nutrition and how people can live longer and feel better. And yes, that drives people, yet that also drives people to go back on meat at times if they don't feel the results right away, right? And so there's just so much that goes through my head on that. But I think we are getting to a point where people are really interested in elevating their consciousness. So I'm wondering if that's another... I don't know. But what are your thoughts? And tell us about Switch for Good and the mission and how you're going about that as well. I'd love this.
I think sometimes I wonder if we're just in this bubble because our consciousness is being risen and we once you kind of wake up to most of it, because I'm not going to pretend like I'm probably not woken up to some things that I should be woken up to, but for this part of the wake up, that it's just going to catch on and just be something that others are after. But we're all in different stages in our lives, and we're living different lives, and we've had different lives, and what's happened to us in our lives is markedly different from the next person. And some people are just trying to survive every day, right? Yeah. So it's so complicated.
It is.
It really is. But I do feel like people are in some ways more open than they've ever been. And then with the political climate, the way it's been the last 3 years in the United States anyway, well, and then I guess we can go ahead and say around the world, and obviously with Ukraine and Iran, you know, Iran is a massive wake up. What's going on over there, like just across the board, every female just like, I'm sick of this, right? I'm going to speak out. I'm willing to lose my life for it, which is intense, right? Because I don't know that I could say that same thing. I mean, you know, I want to be here longer. So it does feel like there's a mass awakening that has at least a wave is happening in our world and across, but it doesn't always resonate the voiceless.
Yeah.
Like it's very human oriented, and we continue to be very human oriented. And so a lot of what we do at Switch, I mean, we started in more behavior change and culture change, and really truly we did so much work in the beginning in understanding how people make decisions to change, and then how they actually change and why they stick to their change. I mean, we looked deeply into that so that we could just be smart about how we were sharing with people, how we were opening people's eyes, and how we were taking them through the journey of change if they were so interested. Now we're doing more in, you know, corporate policy change and structure and governmental policy change within the school system. So we've expanded, but I still think there's just still so much that we're blind. And I saw a commercial the other day that's put on by the World Wildlife Foundation. I'm sure they're a great organization. They've been around forever. I don't know. I'm not a donor, so I don't really know, but it's the commercial where they show the super sad tigers, and then they move to, you can save a tiger, because their home is being destroyed, the Amazon rainforest, and we're having to relocate these tigers. So of course I instantly am like, is anybody going to ask why the rainforest has been shut down? like that seems like really hard work. Like you're capturing 1,200-pound tigers and like taking them in a truck. And first of all, that sucks for the tiger, right? That they're just but that seems like some hard, heavy ass work when you could just stop eating the cows that they're cutting down 6,000 acres of Amazon rainforest every single day. It will be completely gone by 2062. If we keep up at the rate, we'll probably speed up the rate, right? With population growth. And so our editor that is working on we're doing this spoof video that's kind of like, did you want to know like a real reason? It's for cows to graze, and you can stop demanding that, and then the rainforest will be fine. And he said, I think this is really important because I knew the Amazon rainforest was being cut down, but I thought it was for paper. Right. I'm like, I feel you, dude, because you know, no one tells you what's really happening. Like they don't want you to know where your food's coming from and what is happening. So it's you know, just getting people to just open up and ask that question. How many people are asking the question that you and I are asking? Oh, okay, let's back up. Why are the rainforests being cut down? Instead of like relocating like tigers that, you know, if you met a tiger, it would eat you instantly. If you met a cow, it would kiss you instantly. So like, why are we trying to save these? Like, right. You know, I love me some tigers, and yeah, they're interesting looking, but they will rip your shit apart if you meet one. And I have been with a lot of cows, and they will not. Right. So yeah, why are we loving the one and not the other?
Yeah. No, there's no easy answers. It's It's complex. And for our listeners, what would you say are some steps they can take at this point? Because it does seem overwhelming. I think that's part of it, right? It seems so far away and so overwhelming. And so like, is my little choice on my plate really going to make a difference for the freaking, entire planet? What would you say?
Well, in 2020, it was Earth Day's 50th year anniversary. And for 49 years, they had not talked about food as one of the aspects of why our planet is changing. And in 2020, they decided that they wanted to. And so for whatever reason, we got lucky enough to be the ones to provide all the education around food. And as you can imagine, their anniversary is in April. So as you can imagine, the huge party that was going to take place on the Washington, D.C. Mall with hundreds of thousands of people got canceled overnight. And it was an online Earth Day celebration for 24 hours, right at the start of the pandemic, obviously. And so there was a lot of information that they were putting out over the 24 hours, right? Every aspect, every grain of sand that has to do with climate change, including food. And the food portion of the education over those 24 hours had more downloads than any of the other information. We had about 1 million downloads in 24 hours of the different parts of the food that we had worked on in education. And what that told me was there are people, and quite a few of them, who want to take the power into their own hands. They realize that the power is in their own hands when it comes to what's on their plate 3 times a day. Like, I don't know exactly what to do in the next 20 minutes on fossil fuels. Right. Like, I just don't. I get like the big picture, but I definitely know what to do in the next 20 minutes to save the planet with my food choices. And I think people are empowered by that. And that showed us that experience showed us that that's true. So that's what I love the most about it. I mean, really is the power is in our hands. And I know it's going to take all of us, right? It's not going to take 5, but each one of us matters. Right. And then we proliferate that and maybe a few other people come along with us on the journey.
I love it. I mean, it's such a win. Really no downside. Well, I'd like to wrap up. I'd love to know kind of what life is like for you now. It's a heavy load to carry also when you know these things and you know the suffering that's happening, and when you're dedicating your life to, making a positive impact. So what challenges you? How do you take care of yourself? You've got so much going on, so much on your plate. You care so much. So how are you showing that self-compassion to yourself these days too?
Just cut myself some slack, like more slack than I think I ever have or would. I'm a introverted emotional empath. Learned these things about myself over the last 10 years. Everyone's like, you're not an introvert. I am. Yeah. You can put it on for a while, but and so leadership is wildly challenging for me. And quite frankly, I don't love it. And I'm finally able to say that. I mean, in the beginning, it was like, oh, you have to, you got to love it. It's going to be fine. And because you're going to do it. Right. Yeah. And so that has been my whole new challenge over my Switch is almost 4 years old in January. So a couple months, depending on when this airs. And so it's just allowing myself to just be me and say, like, this isn't my favorite thing, and lean into the things that are my favorite things about leadership. There's not a lot, but there's some. Being honest with my team and really leaning into each of their unique gifts and talents, because we just have the coolest team right now and have for a while, and cut myself some slack and not trying to pretend or be somebody that I'm not. because I was a little bit of a pretender that first year, because I was like, I had to do this and I have to like do it all perfect. It's going to be right. And I'm just going to like, and then I was like, Dotsie, come on. You've learned all those skills. You've learned this, like, stop and just cut yourself some slack. So that's like that challenge. And as we all move from athlete to, the business world, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit or whatever, we're moving from, from an artist to, a chef, or, all the things you can move from and to, it's a little bit of a reinvention of yourself. Right. And so you're having to take those attributes that you knew that you were strong in and try to apply them. And it just doesn't always, being an athlete it's very tunnely, tunnel vision, tunnelly. And I operate better like that, but I don't have that option anymore because I'm 50. So I can't, no one's going to give me any money to be an athlete. No, that's not why I'm not. But, so that's my challenge and my journey to run a successful organization when, lots of parts of running an organization, don't come naturally to me at all.
Wow.
So I'm going to keep after it.
You got this, Dotsie.
I don't know.
You got this. But
team makes it
totally
easier on me because they understand. A lot of it was just being honest, and it's you don't want to share that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, being honest with yourself is a good thing.
Well, thank you for being honest. Thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing and for taking the time and energy today. It's been amazing. You're an amazing human being, and I'm very honored to have you on the show.
Well, good luck. You're a fantastic interviewer and conversationalist. This is going to be a wildly successful podcast. The very few are as gifted as you are in this forum. So good luck, and I'm going to be cheering.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I'll see you soon.
Hey.